On March 9th of 2023, a new Souls-like game unlike any other came out. Its art style felt like a cool summer breeze. The combat system, while not perfect, was different and engaging, and most importantly, fun. As for the story, it started off quite simple, but by the end of it all, you realize its simplicity is only there to ease you into a much deeper story, which will leave you with much more questions than answers. I'm Isaac, and let's talk about Clash, Artifacts of Chaos, the Souls like you never played. Welcome to Xenozoic, a bizarre and strange land filled with colors and even stranger creatures that look like a cross between animals and humans if they were fueled by nightmares. In this vibrant world, there is only one law, the law of the ritual. At any point, a person can invoke the one law and force another in partaking in the ritual. The ritual is a fairly simple dice main where the point is to simply have the higher number on your dice than your opponent. Whoever wins the match will have an advantage. The daily life of Xenozoic is filled with danger, combat, and chaos, but the one law holds everything together. We follow the story of this crime against humanity called Pseudo, and for some reason, whenever Pseudo goes to sleep or dies, he turns into this badass avatar. This will never be explained by anyone. One day, while doing whatever a hermit does, Pseudo would hear strange music coming from a mountain, and for whatever reason decided to follow it. When he stumbles on an old man being bullied by someone who was more face than anything else. As the one law is invoked, the man is forced to play the ritual. As he loses the game, he also loses his life, and in the process leaving behind his grandson, who looked like a hungover owl. That's where Pseudo decides to jump in, defeating the bully and rescuing the boy. Having defeated the would-be assailants, Pseudo asks the boy if he had anywhere he could go, since the lands were littered with dangerous beasts and even more dangerous people. Bird Boy explains that he has a brother living in the Xenozoic mountains. However, if he were to return, he would not have a warm welcome, since his brother believed him to be cursed. Judging that going to the mountain is too far and out of the way, Pseudo would decide to bring the boy to Gemini's palace, where we would find the ruler of these lands. Initially, Pseudo had intended to simply drop the boy off at Gemini's palace, hoping that someone would be able to bring him to the mountain. However, once the duo would get to the palace, they would be led through the main gates without being challenged by any of the guards. On the contrary, they were invited and expected, which felt odd. A warm welcome in Xenozoic was not common. With this bad feeling, Pseudo would decide to leave his feathered companion behind before his meeting with Gemini, which turned out to be correct, since turned out Gemini isn't the nicest person around. The boy would reveal to Pseudo that his curse is the ability to link things together, allowing him to transfer life force between both parties. Gemini would take that power for herself and rule Xenozoic forever. And that's when our homeless man decides that getting the boy to his older brother was his new purpose. Before departing on their quest, they would find themselves in a town looking to resupply. Thankfully, they would find a merchant named Eos. Not only does he supply them with equipment throughout their adventures, he also reveals to them that Gemini is the creator of the One Law and possesses the Artifact of Pain. A great artifact of chaos, one that can be used an infinite number of times, and regardless of whether she wins or loses. At the start of combat, she could hit her opponent with the ritual stick. This, combined with her strength, was almost enough to slay any foe in one swing, which is in part the reason why she would remain in power till this day. However, before even being able to challenge her, you'd have to get past her 3 guardians, a giant elephant chimera, followed by a silent warrior of the sea, and last but certainly not least, Sun Moon, a mighty warrior who only knew victory. Each of these guardians possessed a great chaos artifact, second only to the queens in power. To even have a chance at victory, someone would have to find 4 great shield artifacts, but such a feat had never been accomplished. The Xenozoic Mountains. With this new information in hand, Pseudo and the boy set out on a journey to reunite him with his brother, located in the mountains. Before they could make it very far, the duo was intercepted by a band of traveling performers under the command of the director. He led the east sector of Xenozoic. He had also claimed having the ability to see the future, which had helped him amass a large following of believers. But more importantly, he possessed one of the 4 great shield artifacts, making an encounter with him be all but unavoidable. After subduing the band of traveling merchants, Pseudo would travel further into the mountain, finally to come face to face with Bird Boy's older brother. Upon arriving, you're met with hostility. The older brother blames our hungover furthered friend for the death of their grandfather and the destruction of his arm. In classic Pseudo fashion, you challenge him to the ritual, and after a brief fight, Pseudo decides to do what should have been done to protect the village, and that is to fight the director. Not before being told by the older brother that the director was coming for them all and could not be beat. The reason being his abilities of foresight and the fact that he used an artifact of poison. Traveling deeper into the mountain and fighting all manners of creatures, our dynamic duo decides to take rest in a cave. As Pseudo goes deeper into this cave to make sure everything was safe, he left the boy and his dice behind. During this time, the older brother would show up playing the part of the thief as instructed by the director and steal Pseudo's die. And without a set of dice, losing the ritual was certain. After returning, Pseudo steals his resolve and challenges the director, knowing that he'll have to drink the poison before the fight even begins. With the Great Shield artifact in sight, our thumb-like hero decides to fight the director, and against all odds, our duo emerges victorious, leaving the mountain with a better understanding of the boy's power and one Great Shield artifact richer. Pseudo's home. With no other leads, Pseudo decides to return to where he grew up, with the aims of finding his master, hoping that he might have some answers. Traveling through the ruins that honestly look more advanced than anywhere else in Xenozoic, and getting in a brief skirmish with Sun Moon himself, Pseudo would make it to his old stomping grounds, and seemingly the source of the music we've been hearing this entire time. Before advancing any further, Pseudo is confronted by a dream version of himself, almost as if it was a final test, the final test for his last adventure. After defeating him, Pseudo and the boy learn to use the boy's curse for combat. With a firm grasp of his powers, the boy and Pseudo return to town, where a giant turtle was blocking the way before. Using his abilities, the boy gives strength back to the turtle, allowing it to move, opening the path forward. Opening the path to the Corwood Forest. Corwood Forest. Xenozoic isn't the most welcoming of places, or civilized for that matter. They have roads, towns, and even a law. Yes, they may only have the one law, but they have one law, which is exactly what separates the Xenozoicians from the Corwood of the Free. The Corwood don't abide by the one law, and claim to be the only ones of Xenozoic to be free. Free of the artifact, free from Gemini, and free from the one law. But at what cost? Upon reaching the outskirts of the forest, you are stopped by a creature advising you to turn back the way you came, because only insanity awaits those who enter the forest. Unbothered by this revelation, Pseudo asked the creature if he knew who had the Great Shield artifact. Coincidentally, the strange beast said he did. It was his brother. His brother stole the Great Shield artifact and ran into the Corwood Forest, never to be seen again. Now the other brother stands guard at the entrance of the forest, stopping those who would enter. Ignoring every warning sign possible, Pseudo and the boys enter the forest. Soon after entering the Corwood Forest, we meet an individual turning birds into blood. Not being able to use the ritual, Pseudo is no longer able to give himself an advantage, and is left with no other choice but to fight. This is what makes the Corwood Forest different from the rest of Xenozoic. The one law has no power here. However, it seems like the new freedom comes at a cost. The cost of one's sanity. After wandering around the forest, fighting all manners of beasts and Corwood folk, Pseudo would find himself face to face with the holder of another Great Shield artifact. This time, it being the possession of a dear chimera. However, this Corwidian would seem different from the rest. He would greet Pseudo and the boy and explain that he is willing to give the Great Shield artifact and accepts your challenge to the ritual. Everything seems normal up to this point. That is until the chimera creature would begin to eat his own dice. The ritual would be cancelled and the duo would be fighting once again. Despite this chimera's size and advantage, this victory would come quite easy to Pseudo and the boy, since eating his own dice would upset his stomach, leaving him wide open for attacks. After a well-earned victory, the dynamic duo now possessed 2 Great Shield artifacts, making their goal to reach Gemini get that much closer. Caxtay. After obtaining a second Great Shield artifact, the team decide to return to town to resupply before heading to claim the remaining artifacts, when suddenly the music begins to get louder and louder to the point where the boy begins to scream in pain, until finally he passes out. Left with no other option, Pseudo travels back to where he knows the music is coming from. The music was coming from Pseudo's old home, where he met his master. Without a second thought, Pseudo ran as fast as he could, hoping to find an answer. Once he got home, Pseudo ran even faster than he knew he could, attempting to destroy the machine as fast as he could, doing anything and everything to stop the music, to stop the pain, to save the boy. And finally, when the music stopped, that's when our hero would hear his master's voice. Caxtay! Before making his presence known, Pseudo would eavesdrop on his old master, talking into what seemed to be a communication device about the future of Xenozoic, and that future included the boy. Having heard enough, Pseudo would make himself known, declaring that whatever Caxtay had planned for the boy, to forget it, and he challenges him to the ritual. Because not only did Caxtay have plans for the boy, but he also possessed a Great Shield artifact. Calling what happened between Pseudo and his master a fight would simply be dishonest. After humoring Pseudo for a bit, Caxtay stops the fight and simply hands over the Great Shield artifact and tells his old pupil to keep the boy safe. With the music no more and 3 artifacts in hand, the revitalized boy and Pseudo depart for the 4th and final artifact. The last act. In times long since past, the queen had someone close to her. Someone so close to her, she trusted them with the one Great Shield artifact that could counter her own. However, this trust between them could not last, and the queen exiled her once friend. The journey to the final artifact would be the shortest of them all. Located in a cave on the coast of Xenozoic lives a broken man, one with no will to live or reason to fight. He would be the last guardian the pair fought, one step closer to Gemini. The fight between most men would end as quickly as it began. With the elephant chimera being defeated, he presents us with the final shield artifact. Armed with everything we need, the duo takes the fight to Gemini's palace. Face to face with the 3 gates and its 3 guardians, Pseudo prepares himself for his most difficult fights yet, because power is not something his opponents lack. After 3 hard-fought battles, the Hermit and the Bird find themselves facing Gemini. With the Great Shield artifact of pain on his side, the pair are finally able to defeat Gemini. With her defeat came the end of her reign and the end of her life. With victory finally in hand, Pseudo and the boy decide to go back home and live out the rest of their days in peace. Until one night, Pseudo would awaken to realize the boy was missing, and strange music would come once again from the mountain. Without a moment's hesitation, Pseudo would charge at full speed towards the mountain, noticing a giant pyramid descending to its peak. Running through the areas he and the boy had traveled through, places they had fought through, places they had bled in, places where they had shared a meal together. All of these places, all of these memories would be just that if Pseudo couldn't reach the top of the mountain in time. Despite the odds being against him, Pseudo would reach the summit in time, only to be confronted by his master, Caxte, with the boy unconscious behind him. Caxte would explain to Pseudo that there were much bigger things happening around, things that Pseudo could never understand. In spite of it all, his former master would ask him to let the boy go, because his power could do so much good for the world if he came with Caxte instead of staying in Xenozoic. It's at this point that Pseudo declares that no matter the reason, he would not let Caxte or anyone else take his son. And thus, the final battle between master and pupil would commence. Pseudo would fight his old master with everything he had. But unfortunately, Caxte had replicated the boy's power and connected himself with Pseudo. The harder Pseudo fought, the more damage he took, while his master barely took any. Even though our heroic hermit could barely stand, he still would not give up, not until a voice would cut through the violence. It was the boy asking Pseudo, who he now called father, to stop, believing that his powers may be of some use to the greater good of Xenozoic. He asks Pseudo to let him go with Caxte, but to always remember that no matter where they find themselves, they will always be connected. With his new son gone and the adventure over, but with the great artifact of pain in his possession, Pseudo would find himself with all of the power and none of the responsibility. What would happen next would change Xenozoic forever. Till this day, his reasons are only known to himself. Pseudo destroyed the great artifact and declared the one law no more. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It's a little something new I wanted to try out. As you guys have seen, I haven't posted anything in a while. I just wanted to go back and kind of I guess rework on where the channel is heading and where it's going, because I started off with like gaming and reviews and stuff, and then I kind of deviated into reactions, but I kind of want to go back to the roots of gaming. So I might not post as frequently, but I'd like to post higher quality content. This is my first attempt at kind of doing a story recap for a game that I really enjoyed, and I hope you liked it. If you guys did enjoy it, let me know by leaving a comment, liking, and obviously subscribing, because the more you guys subscribe, the more this is going to go out to people, and who knows, maybe we might blow up. And without further ado, peace. If you want to see more of my face, be sure to click the video you see on the screen right now.